Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep, into the life and legacy of Amy Winehouse.
Wow, what a fascinating choice. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. And I'm especially interested because, well, you've given us such a mix of sources here. We've got like this really in-depth scholarly article, right, that kind of looks at Amy's career, but through this lens of gender inequality,
Yeah.
which I think is going to be super interesting, especially alongside just all the biographical info we have too.
Absolutely. I mean, her story is one that continues to fascinate and, even provoke debate.
Yeah, totally. So for this deep dive, we're going way beyond just the headlines, right, about, her struggles.
Right.
We really want to understand how she became, such a phenomenon, how her
Yeah.
music evolved, and really how she kind of just challenged every expectation, right, that was placed on female artists, especially back then.
Definitely.
So let's start, I guess, at the beginning, right?
Right.
Amy's childhood in Southgate, London.
Yeah.
It seems like from day one she was like surrounded by music.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, her father, Mitchell, he was a singer himself, a passionate one at that. And her mom, Janice, she had all these connections to like the jazz world. It's almost as if music was just in her DNA from the very start.
It really does feel that way, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But it wasn't just about, being around music. She really sought it out.
Yeah.
I mean, she formed a rap group with Juliet Ashby called Sweet and Sour when she was just a kid.
A rap group. That's not what you'd expect.
Right.
Yeah.
Not exactly the path you'd imagine for a future soul
Yeah.
icon.
No.
But it does show you that, she had that creative spark, that willingness to, experiment, try different things. That independent streak, it really stayed with her, all through her life, especially like when she was at Sylvia Young Theater School.
Right. And she got expelled, right?
She did.
And it felt like that whole rebel label, it just kind of stuck with her after that.
Yeah, it did. Even when she, went on to work as an entertainment journalist.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like that early tension between her raw talent and this pressure to fit in.
Yeah.
It almost like foreshadows the challenges she'd face later on in her career when she was really in the spotlight.
Totally. And speaking of her career, her big break came when a classmate sent a demo tape to a friend in the industry, right?
Mhm.
It was like pure talent, but then also that element of luck, right?
Right, right.
And then boom, she signed with Island Records.
Yep.
And then her debut album, Frank, comes out in 2003.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's topping the UK charts. She
Bummer.
wins the Ivor Novello Award for Stronger Than Me.
Huge.
Grit Award nominations. I mean, these are massive accomplishments, right? Especially for like right out of the gate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the Ivor Novello, that's particularly significant, right? Because it's not just about popularity, it's awarded for songwriting, specifically. So it shows that the judges, they saw something truly special in her lyrics. The way she crafted these stories, these emotions with words.
Right.
Yeah. Like if you listen to Stronger Than Me, you can hear it, right?
Yeah.
There's this witty vulnerability, this kind of defiance that's so characteristic of Amy. Even then,
Yeah.
it's not just a catchy tune. It's a statement.
Yeah.
You know.
And then I mean we get to Back to Black in 2006. I mean this wasn't just an album, right? This was a cultural phenomenon.
Change, yeah.
Number one in both the US and the UK. I mean that kind of global success, it doesn't just happen, right?
No,
There's got to be
yeah.
something more to it.
I think what's so fascinating about Back to Black is that it wasn't chasing trends; it was setting them. That retro soul sound, and then blended with these deeply personal lyrics, it resonated with so many people, an entire generation. People who were grappling with heartbreak, with addiction, with the complexities of relationships. Yeah.
Totally. And songs like Rehab, Back to Black, Tears Dry on Their Own, I mean they became anthems, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think those songs in particular resonated so strongly with people?
They were raw, they were honest, sometimes painfully so. Amy wasn't afraid to expose her vulnerabilities, her flaws, her struggles.
Yeah.
She was singing about things that people felt but didn't always talk about. And that honesty, that rawness, it was incredibly powerful. It connected with listeners on such a visceral level.
Yeah.
It created this sense of shared experience, this feeling of not being alone in your struggles.
And it's interesting because, at the same time as her career was like soaring, right? Her personal life was becoming much more turbulent. Her relationship with Blake Fielder Civil was
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. It's complicated is a good way to put it.
Yeah, to say the
I mean,
least.
Amy was known for, her partying and
Yeah.
drinking even before Blake.
Right.
But their relationship, I think, it definitely brought new levels of chaos
Yeah.
to her life.
Yeah, and it was all over the tabloids, right? The arguments, the canceled performances, the fights. It's this classic and unfortunately tragic, right, pattern. This vulnerable person being drawn into a destructive relationship.
Yeah.
But then there's also this added layer of how it was all portrayed through the media, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And, the article we're looking at, it raises this crucial question. Was Amy held to a different standard because she was a woman?
Right.
Think about male artists,
Yeah.
right? Like Pete Doherty.
Yeah.
He was known for similar behavior, the drugs, the partying, the chaos.
Yeah.
But he was often celebrated, right?
Right.
As a rock star. But Amy, she faced judgment, criticism, this constant scrutiny.
So are we saying there were double standards at play?
It's it's hard to say for sure, but it's a valid question to ask,
Yeah.
Were women in the music industry, especially back then, expected to be more, well-behaved than
Yeah.
their male counterparts?
Right. Right.
And the article, it argues that, Amy's struggles, they were often portrayed through this very specific lens,
Yeah.
shaped by these societal expectations of how women, especially female artists, should behave.
Right. And this leads us to, her struggles with addiction, which is just such a complex issue. I mean, there's no easy answers, right? And she tried to get sober, right? She
Wow.
even hired a medical practitioner to try and monitor her drinking.
Mm.
It's a heartbreaking reminder that addiction is an illness.
It is.
It's not a character flaw.
It's not about willpower, right?
No.
It's
No.
it's a disease.
Exactly.
And what's even more, tragic, and the article explains this really well, is that periods of sobriety can actually, increase the risk of alcohol poisoning.
What? Really?
Yeah, because the body's tolerance decreases.
Oh.
So it highlights, just how dangerous relapse can be, and really the need for comprehensive support systems for anyone battling addiction.
Right, right. And it's so tragic because in 2011, at just 27 years old, Amy died from alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
And the outpouring of grief from fans, I mean, worldwide, it was immense.
It really was. And I think it speaks to, the profound connection she had with her audience, her music. It resonated on such a deep personal level that her death was felt, like a personal loss for so many people.
Yeah.
It raises these fascinating questions about the relationship between artists and fans.
Mm.
Why do some celebrity deaths hit us so hard? Is it just about the music, the memories attached to it, or is it something even deeper, a sense of shared humanity maybe?
Right, yeah. And her death was, I mean, undeniably tragic. But to kind of shift gears a little bit, let's talk about Amy's lasting legacy. The article argues that she paved the way for other female artists, like Adele, Florence Welch, Lady Gaga. What do you think she did that was so groundbreaking? Was it the music, her persona, or a combination of both?
I think it was both, definitely.
Yeah.
Musically, her blend of jazz and soul and pop was just so unique and influential. But her persona, that was just as impactful.
Yeah.
She was raw, she was vulnerable, she was unapologetically herself. She didn't conform to any of these preconceived notions of what a female pop star should be.
Right, and she really challenged those expectations, didn't she? Her style, her lyrics, her whole approach to being an artist, it was like a breath of fresh air.
It was.
It was a bold statement of individuality in an industry that so often tries to fit people into these neat little boxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And by doing that, by being herself, she opened doors for other women in music to embrace their own unique voices, their own perspectives.
Right, and it's so inspiring to think about, but it also raises a really, really difficult question, right?
Yeah.
How do we remember Amy Winehouse?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do we focus on her talent, her contributions to music? Do we acknowledge her struggles, the demons she battled? Can we even, or should we even, attempt to separate the art from the artist?
There's so much to unpack there, and I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into those questions. But before we do, let's maybe just take a moment to reflect on what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
I mean, what stands out to you about Amy's journey, from those early days in Southgate to becoming this global icon.
I think for me, it's that constant tension, right, between her immense talent and the pressure she faced,
Hmm.
the way she defied expectations, both musically and personally. She was a force of nature, but also a deeply vulnerable human being.
And and that complexity is what makes her story so compelling even all these years later.
Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
it's a reminder that behind the fame and the headlines, there's a real person,
Yeah.
right? With real struggles, real triumphs. And that's a story worth exploring, you
Yeah.
know. Makes you think, doesn't it?
About.
Well, like how would Amy have dealt with, like the world today?
Oh, with like social media and
Yeah.
everything.
Exactly. All that constant like 24/7 news cycle and the scrutiny. I mean, it's a whole different ball game than when she was, in the spotlight.
Yeah, no, for sure. Back then, I mean, the tabloids were brutal, don't get me wrong, but
Right.
now it's like there's this whole other level of like online commentary and fan expectations, right?
Oh, totally.
And just this pressure to constantly be on, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Imagine that pressure. Like every personal struggle, every little misstep just being like dissected and debated online. It's a lot for anyone to handle,
Yeah.
let alone someone as sensitive and prone to, self-destruction as Amy was.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It really raises the question like how do we as a society support artists?
Right.
Especially young ones, right? Who
Right.
are trying to navigate this whole world of fame and all this public scrutiny.
It's a collective responsibility, I think.
Yeah.
The media needs to be more mindful, fans need to be more empathetic, and we, as consumers of music and news, I mean, we need to be more conscious of like the narratives we're perpetuating.
Oh, really? It's like we can't just point the finger at, the media or the fans and say like, "Oh, it's their fault."
Oh, yeah.
It's we all have a role to play here in shaping the culture,
Me
right?
too.
And creating an environment that's more supportive, where artists can be themselves, their authentic selves without this fear of judgment or exploitation.
I think it boils down to recognizing that behind the persona, behind the music, behind the headlines, there's a human being
Right.
with feelings,
Yeah.
with vulnerabilities, and with a right to privacy.
Yeah. And it makes me think about that shrine that was erected in Camden Town after her death, it was just flooded with flowers and messages and tributes. It speaks to the deep connection she had with her fans, right?
Oh yeah.
It was more than just like fandom. It was a feeling of like kinship, like shared understanding.
Definitely. And that's what makes her story so enduring, right? So universally resonant. It's not just about music, it's about, the human condition. We see ourselves in her struggles, in her vulnerabilities, in her triumphs. It's that connection.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the article mentions that Amy like help make it more acceptable for women in the music industry to be raw, vulnerable,
Yeah.
and different, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a crucial part of her legacy for sure.
Yeah.
She really challenged those, traditional, often really restrictive molds of what a female pop star should be.
Mhm.
She didn't shy away from her flaws. She didn't try to fit into some predefined box. She embraced her uniqueness, her quirks,
Hmm.
her imperfection.
And in doing so, she kind of paved the way for others to do the same, right? To
Yeah.
be authentic, to break free from those expectations, and to just express themselves without apology.
Exactly. She gave a voice to a generation of women who felt marginalized, misunderstood, and who were yearning for something more,
Mm.
something more than that polished, perfect image that we so often see in the media.
And it's so empowering, right?
Yeah.
To see someone like Amy with all her complexities and contradictions achieve such incredible success and inspire so many people just by being herself.
Totally. It's this powerful reminder that authenticity resonates, that vulnerability can be a strength, and that breaking the mold, can lead to incredible things.
It really can. So as we kind of start to wrap up our deep dive here, I want to put the question to you, our listener. Knowing everything we've talked about today about Amy's talent, her struggles, the pressure she faced, and those societal expectations she challenged head on, how should we remember her?
It's a tough question. There's no easy answer, but I think it's important to acknowledge the full spectrum of her story.
Right.
The light and the shadow, the brilliance and the pain.
To celebrate her artistry, right? But
Yeah,
also recognize those personal demons she battled, to remember her as a trailblazer, who broke barriers and inspired a generation of artists to embrace their individuality.
and maybe most importantly, to use her story as a starting
Yeah.
point, right? To have these important conversations about addiction, about mental health, and about the pressures that artists face.
Yeah.
Particularly women in the public eye.
If we can learn from her experiences, if we can create a world that's more compassionate, more understanding for those who struggle, well, maybe that's the most meaningful way to honor Amy's legacy.
It's a legacy that continues to resonate, to provoke thought, and to inspire change. And that in itself is a testament to her enduring power.
It's a legacy that's still like evolving,
Oh, for sure.
as we listen to her music, as we talk about her impact, and grapple with all the complexities of her story, we're keeping that legacy alive.
Absolutely. And each generation, they're going to find like new meaning in her work,
Yeah.
new ways to connect with that raw honesty, that vulnerability she had. Think
Yeah.
about it, like what really resonated with someone, listening back in 2006, it might hit totally differently for someone who's just discovering her music today.
Yeah, it's what makes great art so timeless, right?
Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
ability to speak across generations and to kind of evolve with each new listener.
Hmm.
But, there's also this whole conversation about just separating the art from the artist, right?
Uh-huh. Right, yeah, which always comes up, especially with figures like Amy.
Yeah, and it's tricky,
Yeah.
It's a really complex issue, and I don't think there's any easy answer or any one size fits all answer. You
Right.
know, in Amy's case, her personal life was just so intertwined with her music.
Right.
I mean, her pain, it was so palpable in her lyrics
Mhm.
that it's really hard to completely detach those two.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to understand the sunshine without acknowledging the storm that created it, right?
Yeah.
The darkness, the struggles, they're part of what gives her music that depth, that power.
Absolutely. But at the same time, I do think it's possible to appreciate her artistry,
Yeah.
the sheer brilliance of her songwriting, her vocal talent, while also, acknowledging the flawed human being
Right.
behind the microphone to
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of like hold those two truths at the same time.
Right, because ultimately Amy was a human being,
Even
right?
was.
She was a woman navigating a world that wasn't always, kind or understanding. And we can learn from her mistakes. We can celebrate her triumphs and appreciate the art that she created without condoning or minimizing any of the difficult aspects of her life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important to remember that context. That the societal pressure she was up against, the double standards applied to women in the music industry.
Right.
To understand the forces that were working against her, even as she was achieving this incredible success.
Because her story really is a human story, right? It's full of contradictions, complexities, and ultimately, I think a reminder that success doesn't always equal happiness or inner peace.
Yeah, and that's maybe the most poignant lesson we can take from her legacy, right?
Yeah.
Fame, fortune, critical acclaim, none of it guarantees personal fulfillment. It's a reminder to prioritize our well-being, our mental health, our emotional health, even amidst the pursuit of our dreams.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Amy Winehouse's life and legacy, I want to leave you, our listener, with this thought. Knowing what we know now, having explored all the highs and lows of her journey, what resonates most with you about Amy Winehouse? How will you carry her story forward?
Keep listening to her music. Keep thinking critically about the narratives that surround her and keep the conversation going.
Yeah, because in remembering Amy Winehouse, we honor not just a musician, but a complex, flawed, and ultimately human story.
A story that continues to challenge, to inspire, and to remind us of the power and the fragility of the human spirit.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration of the stories that shape our world.